What's up, guys? Welcome back to episode number 43. Thank you for coming back and tuning in. This is going to be part 2 of my interview with Tony Ferguson, legendary A&R music guy from Interscope Records, who signed and discovered No Doubt, Gwen Stefani, and who was my mentor during most of my time in the music industry. We get into how difficult it was to find a producer that wanted to take No Doubt on, because, again, that type of music was the furthest thing from what was succeeding at that time, so nobody wanted to take it on. He thought the label was going to drop the band. Things got so hard, he even began doubting himself if he made the wrong move signing them, and how he met a young Alanis Morrissette and came within an inch of signing her. Both Alanis and No Doubt blew up at the same time. He goes into what it was like hearing both of them on the radio at the same time everywhere. We also go into a story about how a up-and-coming rap group burst their way into the Interscope offices with fake guns and ski masks, and how the SWAT team was called out, and Suge Knight's role in that whole encounter. Fantastic story. And what Tony saw in me that made him want to take me on as my mentor. So, great episode. I'm very excited for you guys to check this one out. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to Connection is Magic. I'm your host, Samson Schulman, a former music executive turned podcaster and coach. In a world obsessed with the highlight reel and keeping our difficulties hidden behind the curtain, we end up feeling lonely and isolated, and opportunities for human connection are missed. On this podcast, we dive deep with our guests and get them to share those dreaded unfiltered pieces. We learn how to make lemonade out of life's lemons and realize adversity isn't sent to break us, but rather shape us into the greatest versions of ourselves. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Now let's begin our journey back home to connection.
I couldn't find anyone, and then it was the bass player of Blondie, who left Blondie and joined Interscope Records. It was Tom Wally's main A&R guy. He suggested, what about this guy, Matthew Wilder? I said, I don't know who Matthew Wilder is. He said, he's a writer, but he had a big hit a few years ago with a song, Ain't Nothing Gonna Break My Stride. And it was a big hit, and it had that ska pulse, but very pop. And it was...
That's the exact combo you needed, right?
Yeah. I phoned him, and they were going to do a show at the Troubadour. There was a line around the block all the way up the hill.
And you pulled up to this line, and was your mind kind of blown when you saw the line?
I thought it was the wrong band. I was in the wrong place. And it was around that time that Jimmy said, look, this is going to be difficult. We find a good producer and stuff, and we need help. Maybe we should talk to them about, just calling it about Gwen Stefani and having it as her.
He wanted to...
He was thinking, because at that time he was thinking of Madonna.
Yeah. He wasn't wrong. Like, the logic
the logic was there.
Yeah.
But it was...
But it's also very, like, a fuck you to the band, obviously.
The band would have said fuck you back.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. They were the very tight-knit band.
That would have been an example. We keep saying it's nothing personal, just business. That would have been one of those, right? But anyways, go ahead.
So Matthew saw it, and he said to me going in, he said, I haven't seen the band, I'll do it. I said, without seeing the band? He said, no, I've heard the tracks, I know what to do, I'll do it. No problem.
Wow.
So he said, just a formality. I thought, just a formality, you go to see the show, everything will be fine. The show finishes, I said, want to go back and meet the band? He said, yeah, sure, but I can't do the record. I said, what do you mean you can't do the record? You told me you were going to do the record. He said, that's before I saw them. He said, well, that's your problem. I said, well, meet the band. Just come up and meet the band.
He wasnn't feeling the show then, right? Is that it or what?
Well, he felt the show, but he thought it was too babyish, juvenile. This 16-year-old blonde girl with pigtails dancing around the stage.
Fair enough. Okay.
And you got to remember, reggae and ska music, although it was very popular worldwide, wasn't exactly an American institution.
Not at all. That's why I think you must have had a crystal ball, Tony, to recognize that this could maybe be something, because...
Oh, at that point, I was hanging on by...
It was just a threat at that point, right?
I actually thought I made a big mistake.
Wow.
Yeah. I love the band, but maybe this is a mistake. America just won't do it. I can't do this.
You went against the grain of what was popular at the time. Although you although you recognize that there was a void for a lead female, though. Yeah. That was like your only saving grace in a way.
Well, that was the logic behind it.
Yeah.
But the actual belief was that audiences loved this band. People who saw them loved the band and went to see them again. That's a sign. There was bands being signed for like millions of dollars in Los Angeles
couldn't
at the
do
time
that.
that couldn't do that.
Okay, there you go.
So I thought, fuck it, let's just go for it. Matthew was brilliant because Matthew was a consummate musician, piano player, organ player. He wrote songs for Tina Turner and all these people. He met them. It went off well. They didn't really want him. They didn't think he was hip enough. Matthew sat with them, talked to them about the soundscape and stuff like that, and they started to trust him. And then, God bless him, he was living in the North Valley, had to drive on the 405 all the way down to Orange County.
Yeah.
It took him 2 hours going there and usually 2 hours going back. So 4 hours a day was spent in the car. And then you do about 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours of rehearsal.
This guy saw it. This guy knew it was there.
Yeah, but that's a lot to do.
That's amazing, man.
For very little money.
You mentioned this a few minutes ago where you said you were hanging by a string. I want to go to that. This podcast, honestly, is about these moments in life where shit could have turned left, and then at the last minute it turned right. And you got a good story there for that, because that was this project.
Well, we finished the record with... Okay, I'll get to that.
Yeah.
We finished the record with No Doubt and Matthew, delivered the record to Interscope, and they said no.
Now, this is the one you said they gave you $200,000 to do, which you had to fight to get the $200,000. Right. Okay.
They said, no, maybe we should just go back to the original plan of having her as a solo artist. So I went home to England for Christmas, and I thought, this is over.
Yeah, it's done.
This is not going to happen. We're done. So I went back to work early January, walked into the office, and okay, what are we going to do with No Doubt? What are we going to do with the record?
Were you thinking about how you're going to break it to the band, that they were going to like get dropped then at this point, or what?
They phoned me up, and it felt like a nail in the coffin because they said we want to fire our manager. He's not doing enough for us. And I said, listen, guys, this is a big mistake. You know, this guy's connected. He has connections with radio. If we get the right track, we could probably get some radio play to stimulate, you know, the launch of the record. I mean, this is not the time to fire a manager when you just finished the record.
Now the label was they were growing a little tired of waiting for this to do well. And now here's the band on the other side saying, we want to get rid of our manager, which you think would put a monkey wrench in things further. So you're kind of fucked on both sides of this thing, right?
Well, it sends the wrong message to the record company that you don't believe in your management. As I'll go to the manager and say, look, I did all I could. I'm sorry, but you're fired. He said, fuck.
You had to deliver this to the manager? Oof.
He said, okay. Can't you do anything? I said, I've drove down to Orange County, sat with them for like 3 or 4 hours, and they're adamant. He said, something went on. He said, I'm walking out the door. He says, He says, what do you think happened with the band? I said, I don't really know. He says, well, I got another girl. I said, oh. I said, what's her name? He said, it's a girl named Alanis Morrissette. I said, who? She was a teenage pop idol that did Moles, did that whole Tiffany kind of breaking records in Canada. Mm-hmm. So I said, he gave me a cassette of her. So I'm listening to this and hearing records. So I started to pursue that. At the same time as I was trying to figure out what to do with No Doubt.
Yeah.
And what happened was I went to Matthew Wilder's place. He played me the finished record. We went through the tracks one by one. And I said, the only track that really, really sticks out to me is a song called Don't Speak. But it's a ballad. It doesn't really represent what the band is, especially if you're trying to brand the band in some kind of way.
Yeah,
that's the
which the first record is the most important record.
He said, well, there's a good... What about, Just a Girl? I'm Just a Girl. What about that song? I said, it kind of bounces around. Actually, that's pretty good because it does this female statement thing. And she was going through her relationships, Gwen that is, with Tony, the bass player. They'd split up. So she was writing about their...
Well, that's what
split.
Don't Speak was about, right? Yeah.
That's a lot of that, what Tragic Kingdom was. I met with Alanis, and then she was working with a really good record producer, and he played me a song called You Ought to Know. And I heard it, and fuck, this will never get on the radio.
Because it's an angry female?
Because it's an angry female doing this thing, but I thought, well, wait a minute, what's hard rock? With the male, that's all fucking angry. Why can't a woman be fucking angry?
Axl Rose is that guy, right, or whatever. Yeah.
So I went to Jimmy, and Jimmy said, "That's an interesting song. That's a really good song and stuff." But Ted wouldn't sign it.
Oh my God, I remember you telling me this. And I remember at the 11th hour when some other label was going to pick it up, didn't you say you went to Ted's Bentley and wrote a handwritten note and put it on his Bentley windshield?
Signed this girl. But it was too late by then, so...
I'm surprised, though, can I be honest? I'm surprised that Jimmy didn't, like, get that, because I feel like that would be an artist where Jimmy would get it and like force it through.
I think it was just a bad time for Jimmy because there was stuff going on in his world with the rap stuff and everything else. We were number one at one point to sign her, Alanis, and then we became number 2 or number 3, and I think it was Madonna's label, Maverick,
that signed Alanis.
Signed her.
I mean that makes sense, but that's crazy because that one went on to do like 25 million, as did Tragic Kingdom. So you could have had 50 million records under your belt, Tony.
That would have been fun. Well, January, coming back from that Christmas where I thought everything was over and the band weren't doing much. We had the finished record. It wasn't mixed.
Right, and the manager had to be let go at this time as well.
The manager was let go, so now we're back to that. Like, what the fuck are we going to do with No Doubt? Then I got a phone call from a publisher who suggested I talk to a guy named Rob Kahane and Paul Palmer, who had just started Trauma. And also at that time, Trauma became distributed through Interscope. So they were part of the Interscope family. So I thought, maybe a back door in. Called up Paul Palmer. Hi, Tony Ferguson here. He goes, who? I said, Tony Ferguson. What? Interscope Records. Oh, Interscope. You were with Interscope? I said, yeah. He didn't know who I was. I walked in with the record because he lost the record or something.
Again, Just a Girl, Don't Speak. These are like the big songs on there, right?
All the big songs. Played it for me. He goes, who else has heard this? And I said, what's Jimmy think of it? I said, well, Jimmy's kind of, ambivalent, doesn't quite know what to do. He goes, He said, let me do something. I'm going to play it for my partner, Rob Kahane. We walk into Rob Kahane's office. Yeah. But there's another guy sitting there taking a meeting. And Paul said, I'm sorry, I didn't want to disturb the meeting or something, but I want you to hear this.
He just happened to be sitting there, you're saying?
Yeah, this guy's sitting there with Rob Kahane. They're taking a meeting. We barge in. So they play the cassette, Just a Girl and Don't Speak were the 2 tracks that came up first. Rob stopped the record. I said, who's got this? He said, Interscope. He said, what are they doing with it? I said, nothing. He goes, he goes, what do you think? And this guy stands up. He goes, I know who this band is. He said, well, it's No Doubt. He said, yeah, No Doubt. They play on our station. It was K-Rock. The main guy from K-Rock Radio was sitting in the room. Wow. And he knew through California what sales we had done with this band.
He knew about the lines around the Troubadour and all that stuff, right?
He knew about that stuff. Yeah. Rob said, would you play this? Kevin Weatherly said, yeah, sure. I would play this. They're a great band. Then Rob went to Jimmy and said, look, I could work this record and I could work it through K-Rock and work it through everybody. So Jimmy poured more money into the project. All of a sudden we had more money coming into the project.
Got it.
We paid Paul Palmer to mix this thing. Record was done. Then as we were mixing, they're going out, making the record cover, looking for ideas for the record cover, and that all came out with the Orange County, Gwen holding the orange, Tragic Kingdom, because they really didn't like the Disneyland whole thing that was going on, and the whole Stepford Wives kind of thing that was going on in Orange County.
That's right. Yeah,
that was
that's right.
That's not
pushback. Sure.
And the rest is pretty much history.
That's it.
Yeah, we got it out. Except MTV wouldn't play the video, and the video was amazing. The first video we made of Just a Girl was really, really good. But MTV wouldn't play it.
Oh, why wouldn't they play it?
They didn't like her. They thought she was a flash in the pan.
But then all they did eventually was play No Doubt videos. So what was the turning point? It just took off at radio, then they had to play it? Is that what happened?
Yeah, it took off at radio, but also the radio guys were phoning MTV and saying, what the fuck are you doing?
Crazy.
This song's a hit. What's your problem?
So they just got on late. They had to get... Okay, right. What about the movie Clueless? I mean, that was like a cultural phenomenon. I mean, I grew up when that movie was really happening. What was the impact, right? The impact that would have
was strong. People were phoning up, trying to find out what that song was in this movie Clueless. Yeah, it caused some attention.
Okay.
And then things started to snowball. Everybody suddenly went, walking down the street, people said, great band, no doubt, who 3 years ago were going...
One of my favorite things, Tony, is like, you said success has many fathers. You always taught me that. Success has many fathers, but failure's an orphan. You were the champion. I mean, you were like the day one champion for the band. What does that feel like?
Yeah, it was kind of overwhelming because you'd get every person and their dog calling you up because you've just got a hit record and you're going to wave a magic wand and do something for them.
What did that do for your career?
At that time, I was working so hard on that I thought, is this what it takes to singularly make a hit record? I'm not sure I want to do this for a living.
Wow.
This is hard work. I mean, the hours we spent in the studio, the hours on the road, the traveling, to get like pushed in the face, and you know what they say, you know, what beats you down makes you stronger. Well, maybe that's true, but I didn't feel that strong after that, to be honest. And it kind of left a taste in my mouth because the band got very upset with me. That they saw it as betrayal.
What?
That I went to Paul Palmer and Rob Kahane to put it on their independent label, Trauma, distributed through Interscope. They thought it was a slap in the face.
They didn't know the backstory though, right? Or what?
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
And I got the blame for it. So the band and I didn't talk for a long time.
That ruptured the relationship.
It ruptured the relationship, but they had a hit record.
I mean, I knew it was a thankless job to be a manager, Tony, but I didn't know it was a thankless job to be an A&R as well.
At the end of the 90s, into the 2000s, around 2005, 6, I forget when Gwen got married, but she did a nice little speech thanking Tony Ferguson.
Which is a funny story because you said that you were at Jimmy's house for this wedding, and like, didn't you say there was like George Clooney? There was like Brad Pitt. There's other people, and Gwen is like, all this is possible thanks to Tony. And everybody's like, who the fuck is Tony?
I know.
I remember you saying
there was 400 close friends of Gwen Stefani, and they're like the A-list of the who's who in Hollywood. You know, Ben Stiller.
Exactly.
All these. Brad Pitt was there. In fact, I wanted to take a pee.
Yeah.
And Jimmy had a pool, and of course the main party was in the house, and the grounds around the house. So I knew the pool was up there, and not many people knew about that, so I went up to take a pee. I walk in there, there's no one in there. So I walk in there, I'm like going, nice echo in this bathroom, really good. And the guy looks around me, and it's Brad Pitt. So I took a piss next to Brad Pitt. And as I'm walking out, we're walking down back towards the...
Together, you're going back to the... Yeah.
And we're chatting, you know, what do you do? How's the movie? You know, I don't know what the fuck I said to him. I was like, Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And as I'm walking down, there's all these girls, all these women, like, looking at me and Brad, and they're all going, who's he? I know he's Brad Pitt, but who the fuck's he? So I said, hi, Brad. Bye, Brad. See you later. Oh, good night. So I became phone friends with Brad Pitt for about 10 seconds.
That's a great story.
So that was funny.
You've always struck me as, like, you didn't get lost in the whole Hollywood thing, which there's a lot of people who kind of see success and they kind of, well, for lack of a better word, they go Hollywood. They kind of, get caught up in it. And I feel like you've always managed to kind of keep your feet like level on the ground. Would that be fair to say? And I'm like, how have you managed to do that when a lot of people, would you agree, don't?
My aspirations weren't that high. So I guess there was about a 2-week period where I could have written my own job description and payment.
So go more into that. Yeah, what was the thought process?
I couldn't do it. I suddenly realised I could start my own independent label, get it distributed
off of the strength of what you just did, right? Yeah.
Just off the strength. But I thought, this is a one hit. Like Jimmy said to me, 1 time, lucky. 2 times,
you got something?
You got something. And I never got a big one like that. I mean, that's 25 million records.
Right.
It's not often you can sign that.
Now, Alanis could have been the second, I suppose. I mean, it was that close, it sounded like, yeah.
Because I went through that whole summer and autumn of 1996, I think. Yeah. Going everywhere, and only two records were being played. Yeah. You Ought to Know by Alanis Morrissette and Don't Speak. Just a Girl from No Doubt.
At the same time, those were blowing up. Oh,
back to back on some
wild.
stations.
Now, if you would have gotten that signing, then how do you think that would have changed your career?
Only that I could have made a bigger and better deal if I wanted to, but I didn't want to make the deal.
Because you didn't want the additional pressure.
Yeah,
right?
I know how record labels are run, but I never really fitted into the structure of the business side of a record label.
And what do you mean by that?
Manipulating and trying to manage acts and artists and getting their records played. It was a fight.
The politics of it?
The politics within the companies were very, very shady.
The word I would use in a lot of cases is there's a lot of duplicitous behavior. Don't you agree? And that's got to take a toll. Like, it's hard to be in the music industry when you have a moral compass. I mean, is that fair to say? Because there's shit you got to do, I think, just to make it,
the higher up the ladder you go, the more shit you're going to have to do.
You're going to have to do,
You're going to have a really strong disposition. And my disposition at that time wasn't that strength. And I just didn't want to be chasing hit records all the time. And the acts that I signed or worked with after that weren't straight-ahead pop acts.
But we had Gary Greenberg on, who you're aware of, right? And remember I told you I was going to play? He said something about the music industry in general, and I thought it was brilliant. And I wanted you to, like, listen to this 30-second clip and then tell me kind of in real time what your thoughts are. Is that all right?
Okay.
So you're like a police officer in a way. Like, police officers see a lot of bad shit. And you see a lot of bad shit, don't you?
I do. I see stuff that would just really, make your skin crawl, that people do to each other. Because the music business is a very exploitative business. People, you're talking about people's dreams, and whenever you've got artists running around who so desperately want something to happen for them, they're easy prey. And believe me, this town has the most talented artists in the world. I believe that. They also have the most talented hustlers.
Oh, wow. Well said, man.
It's like when I look out of my window over the LA basin, I see a lot of sheep and I see a lot of wolves. And hopefully I try and save as many sheep as possible from the wolves. That's part of my job, but I can't save them all.
No, he's right.
Was that kind of brilliant, though?
He's right.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts?
As far as I know,
and
I'm not on the inside of any of these labels or these executives that work at the labels. I've never been an inside man.
Yeah.
But what I've seen from the outside is that there were some people that should never have been in the music business. They'd be better car salesmen or mafia bosses.
That's what I was looking for, yes.
Luckily, I aligned myself with people who were mavericks and were somewhat odd, eccentric, but they weren't evil.
But you're acknowledging that exists.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Lucky for me, I never really
didn't deal with that.
Touched an organization
because again,
like
Jimmy is a maverick type.
Jimmy was a musician, record producer. He was all about the records. You know, he had to do what he had to do, but he never went into the dark, the dark side of life. No, he never went into that. But there were some that did,
and had a lot of power.
Yeah. And they were.
Would you make it a point to try and avoid those people? I mean, you were aware of them and you tried to avoid them then, or what?
Absolutely. And that also caused problems because there were some people that I just didn't want to do business with. And of course, they didn't want to do business with me because they thought, well, who the fuck are you? You know, how dare you? Fuck off. So I thought, I don't want to be with those kind of people. So I just stayed around Interscope. I could have left Interscope and done things, but I was there for 20 years.
Oh, long run, 20
years of Interscope. That's a long time. Yeah. In the record business, that's a fucking long time.
It's like dog years.
It is.
It might as well be 100 years,
As an A&R guy, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, I think that might be a record, I think. For like one major label position as an A&R, that's got to be a record. You got to be in the top 10 as far as people that have done that.
Probably more well known for that in the music business than No Doubt, you know. He lasted a long time.
You know the word providence, right? Okay, so like there's a little bit of providence with your path. I mean, and wouldn't you say like right place, right time, and then right when you get to Interscope, it's like Dre and this and that and that. And you said Interscope had, I think, the top 4 records in all of the music industry. It was like, right, like No Doubt, Dre, Snoop, right? Gavin, Bush.
Bush.
So these 4 out of all of the labels in music was Interscope, and you'd only been there for a couple of years at this point, right? I mean, you were still newer there.
4 or 5 years. I must admit, when I look back, I'm old now, and I look back on my life, and I look back on my career.
Yeah. Somebody was looking out for you, I feel like,
so
right?
Fucking lucky.
Somebody, yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky. I don't know why.
Huh. You must have done something right in a previous life.
I don't know. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, like, I could keel over any minute, Very lucky. Because the harder I tried, the worse it got.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah, sometimes the harder I tried to push it down people's throat to try and get people to do something they don't want to do. That was my day, was spending as an A&R guy, convincing people to do something that they instinctively do not want to do. That's the hardest thing. That comes with the artists, with the producers, with everybody else. Because look at Matthew Wilder didn't want to do it. He didn't want to produce the record. He saw them, said, okay, but I don't want to do this. So you have to sit down with the guy and say, this is why you should do this. And all you're doing basically is say, if you do this, the possibility of what could happen could be amazing.
Yeah, well...
But then you're dealing with the possibility. And 9 times out of 10, it always...
doesn't happen.
So yeah, I was lucky.
We skipped over one very, very funny story I think the listeners would love to hear. There was a group of guys, aspiring rappers, who came into the lobby one day, and Tony tells it, like, you look out your window and you see about 40 fucking cop cars, and you're like, oh my God, is the federal building being taken over? What? Tell them the rest of the story.
Well, my office at that point was on the 12th floor of the building overlooking in the Westwood area where UCLA is. And so there's a lot of buildings, a lot of traffic. As you said, the federal building is next door, government building. And I'm looking out the window and there's helicopters going around. So I thought, well, is a demonstration? I mean, or it's been a bad accident on the freeway? I mean, what's going on here? And then they started hovering really low and then drove. And then I heard the sirens of the cop cars coming up, and they're parked right outside the building. So I'm looking out the 12th, looking down, going, wonder what's going on. Then I hear this commotion, and apparently what happened was Jimmy had called a meeting in the conference room with Suge Knight, Ted Field, a bunch of Interscope people to take a look at a band who's going to do a showcase. And they were very young, I think 3 or 4 of them, rappers. And this manager they had, this black guy manager. But they had walked into the building in the lobby, which is a huge lobby. And you've got to remember there's some government agencies in that building as well. So the security there is very tight. Particularly with all the stuff that was going on.
With Suge at the time,
with Suge Knight, and also with, Washington, D.C., and about the black artists being detrimental to
youth
society,
culture and everything.
Youth culture, all this bullshit. So these 3 black kids walk in with the manager, and as they get into the elevator, I mean, the security guys were eyeing them, like going, oh, black guy's coming in, black guy's coming in. And they walked in, and just the doors are closed, and they took out these balaclavas and put them over their head, these black hoods. So the cops, for the security rather, immediately call the cops. And they come in for the meeting, and there was a young woman in the foyer. It was her first day on the job. And she let them in, and Jimmy had them into the meeting, and apparently the meeting started off. The squad cars are still around. I go out to the lobby. I say, what the fuck's going on? Everyone is out of their offices saying, what's going on? What's going on? Then apparently a SWAT team burst through the doors of Interscope Records with machine guns. Guns drawn. The poor girl behind the desk faints or just has a heart attack. I don't know what happened to the poor girl. I know she never came back again to work. And people had to run out and say, oh, well, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? We've been told you've got some people up here, blah, 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 what's going on, Someone called the police. They went, no, it's okay. It's just these kids. Well, the kids had gone into the conference room. So the Suge Knight, the manager of the band, the 3 kids, Jimmy and a bunch of Interscope people, they showcased. And then the black manager copped an attitude at the meeting. Like, My boys are going to be bigger than Snoop Dogg. My boys are going to make Tupac Shakur eat crow. Yeah. So everyone's going, yeah, right, okay. Suge Knight flew across the table, and Suge Knight flew across the table. Jumped out of his chair, flew across, grabbed the guy by the throat, dragged him down on the table, and said, basically, fucking shut the fuck up, you blah, blah, blah. Wow. How dare you talk to us like that? How dare you do that? And that was the end of the meeting.
Wow.
And Jimmy's comment was, well, that's a different way of doing things. Everyone was shocked, apparently, when Suge Knight did this.
Oh, my God, man.
And, of course, Jimmy, people knocked on the door, hey, Jimmy, there's a problem outside. We've got the SWAT team out here. And the building's surrounded by helicopters and the SWAT team. What? So
Jimmy had no idea that all that was going on. Right.
Because they're in a conference room.
That's a good one. On that note, okay, so, Jimmy is, he's got a lot of wisdom to him. And I remember you telling me once, I always like hearing secondhand Jimmy doses of wisdom, if that makes sense. So I remember you saying that he said he doesn't care how the ball goes in the hoop as long as it goes in the hoop, right?
Yeah,
that was like one of them. And then I remember, you remember Mark Williams, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was in a meeting with Mark, and Mark said something like, Jimmy said, I go stand next to that guy, my life gets better. Like, he had like the simplest wisdom.
Well, that's how he got on with. He would come in and he'd walk into a meeting, and I used to be when people would come in and go, okay, everybody, stop. They get the file, they put the file down on the table. Let's talk business here. Yeah. Jimmy would come in and he'd go, hey, what's happening? What's going on? And people go, hi, Jimmy. Hey, what's your name? Sit down, let's talk. He was like a mafia.
Yeah, a little bit like that.
He had that Italian thing going where, hey, nothing's a big deal. We could do whatever you want to do. Let's just talk and chat, let's do things together.
That's a great approach, though, isn't it?
And it used to unnerve some people.
His approach disarmed people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, on the other side of the coin, he was cutthroat.
He could be fierce. Oh, yeah.
Like cold.
Really? Okay.
Very cold. It wouldn't be a temper tantrum. It wouldn't be like, you fucked up or so. He would just look at you and you knew you did wrong. He had those eyes.
Wow, the eyes.
I saw it so many times. And people.
He wasn't a yeller. No.
No, Jimmy didn't have that disposition. I remember going to Italy.
Yeah.
I went to southern Italy, where Jimmy came from, and we were backstage, and these old Italian people came in, and they were like Jimmy's family. And they were going, Giovanni. They go, Giovanni. And I'm going, what the fuck is Giovanni? Well, Iovine in Italian is Giovanni.
Giovanni, wow.
So I'm trying to figure out, who's Giovanni? I thought it's a good nickname. What does it mean? It's my surname, you stupid. Anyway, so hanging out with the family and watching Jimmy interact with some of the family members was kind of interesting.
That is interesting. How did you see fame change Gwen? And did you see fame change her? Or did she manage to stay kind of the same girl?
Pretty much the same girl.
It didn't really go to her head or anything. She felt down to earth to you after that success?
Oh, yeah. Compared to other people, yeah, without a doubt. The whole band was like that. They were pretty solid. They had their little excessive problems that cropped up personality-wise. Yeah. Like a bit of alcohol too much or drugs. Sure. Or whatever. But it was very low-key and nothing like what rock and roll could be like.
Yeah, I just watched the Oasis brothers. Like, that's a great documentary, by the way.
Oh, yeah. They're fighting.
Fame went to their heads and they fucking can't even talk to each other. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, the Gallaghers. And that didn't like Crosby, Stills, and Nash show up in different buses, right? Yeah. To do exactly. So nothing like that with No Doubt.
Nothing, but I think towards the end when the touring came too much, I think but they may have travelled a little differently. Yeah. Not always together, but most of the time they were always together.
That's cool. That's cool.
It was a group. It was a very tight unit.
That's what she mentioned. Yeah.
And they respected each other, which was amazing.
That is great. And I just wanted to give you a personal thank you, Tony, for what you did for me and helping me find my way. I think that was really awesome.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
I feel like
looking back at it now, you know, although I didn't stay in music per se, my chapter of life in the music business, I think was, I think it just like helped form the way that I look at life. And I look at it from a much higher vantage point now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because, you know, the music industry, don't you agree? It's unlike any other business, I feel like.
Well, it's full of personalities.
It's full of personalities.
And excesses.
Yes.
So it's full of glamour and everything else
All
that's
that.
supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But really, it's just a business.
Right.
You can get rich quick sometimes. But it, like anything else, was relate because it's based on relationships so much.
It is.
Between the artists, the labels, the managers, the agents, whatever.
Yeah.
That it sets you up for the world to meet and greet different people. So you meet different people,
which is going to stretch and grow your perspective and you. Yeah,
it's like Keith Moon of the Who said: if you want to join a rock group and see the world, that's the truth. You really see the world through a rock band, and not because you see it through rose-tinted glasses.
No,
you see a lot of bad shit on the road. That's for sure.
Yeah, and in the business,
really bad side of humanity. Yeah. So, but it's an eye opener. Yeah,
it is,
and it does broaden your.
It's a vantage point that you can take with you that's useful beyond the music industry.
Yes. Yes, you're right.
And I want to ask you, because I was taking the class with you, the UCLA class you were teaching, right? I was going to say, what did you notice? What did you think that I kind of had that maybe stood out at the time?
Your curiosity.
My curiosity? You're not the first person to tell me that.
As opposed to somebody who usually comes into that position who wants the boundaries stated, know what they're going to do, and really don't go much beyond that. You came in with like a clean slate.
You could tell that there was a genuine thirst or curiosity, which...
Absolutely. No, dude, your curiosity and thirst for information was appealing to me because you took it seriously in a matter-of-fact manner.
Yeah.
But you were insistent, and you weren't scared to talk about it if you didn't understand something, or that you wouldn't go into detail. Most people go, oh, yeah, okay. And they just you wanted to know what was going on.
Yeah.
And that was appealing.
Thank you, Tony.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. And I've kept that, actually, believe it or not. Yeah.
I know you have.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. And I think we've shared a lot of good stuff here. And thank you for being so open in the interview. And we'll see you guys next episode. Thanks, Tony.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very enjoyable.
Thank you so much again for tuning in to today's episode. It really means the world to me. If you heard anything relatable that created new awareness for you, please visit our podcast on iTunes and leave a rating or review. This helps build our audience. Please comment, like, and share this episode out with your family, friends, coworkers, or anyone who you feel would benefit from the messages shared in today's episode. I'm really, really grateful for your help in spreading these messages of hope and wisdom. The world is in such great need right now, and your support helps carry the message onward to others who need it. Also, please consider becoming a monthly financial contributor to the podcast. You can do so by visiting connectionismagic.com and clicking on the Patreon link. Patreon is a third-party platform which helps support creators in exchange for exclusive content and offers. You'll be able to get discounted merchandise like comfy hoodies, t-shirts, as well as retreat discounts where we'll have special guest speakers and group activities to connect you with like-minded community members. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, please stay connected.